I'll have 3 themes today. So I have one theme where I'll talk about 5 examples of subject matter experts, or 5 examples actually of people testing, people doing the testing. Then I have a section about volunteers and prima donnas and about culture. And the last section is actually practical tips on what I do when I have subject matter experts doing the testing for me. And these are some of the illustrations I'll be using throughout the talk. There's this Lego car down here, I'll be talking about that one. I'll be talking about this illustration in the middle, where that's something I actually have been doing, tossing around fireballs. And the last one, that's a prima donna, the opera singer, right? So let's get back to the car one. Because what is that thing, subject matter expert? It's not a term that we generally use, but in this context, I will use it as a domain specialist, something that has some know-how. And I'm kind of a Lego enthusiast. It goes with the territory. I'm from the country where Lego comes from, but still, I've never built that car. It's not even my car. But I saw someone build it, and I went, wait a minute, all those pieces, you're missing to put a couple of pieces in your model. I could tell because I had built many sets like that, yeah, the table scrap here in between, all the small 1x1s, whatever, I knew that's usually left over when you're building a large Lego set. But those larger pieces, they should go in there somewhere. So I have sort of pre-existing knowledge that I can apply and put into my situation. So that's one way to look at a subject matter expert. So let's look into the first section on the subject matter experts. When I talk about subject matter experts, one thing you could think of originally is, yeah, that's the business people. That's the business people that does the testing. And what kind of context does this happen in? I often work in packaged applications, so it's like SAP or Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics 365 platform, or their Salesforce or ServiceNow, anything that comes packaged that the enterprise is using. And sometimes it's just the business people that's testing this. It's not, they don't even have testers. It might just be a collaboration between the business person and some functional analysis, business analysis person sits and configures the application to the business need. So, oh, could you do this graph for me in the application? Sure, they'll go and prepare it. So sometimes it's a matter of the ping pong between the developer and the business person. So that's one set. They can see it immediately, so that's fine. Another situation, actually, all the testers. There's a lot of people testing. And there's actually a lot of testers being so expert in the application that they're testing is that they become the expert. I often see it that actually they become the product owner. They know everything. I have no testers that have been testing the same application for 30 years. I mean, they know stuff, okay? They were probably, I remember a specific application. I mean, they were there when it was built in the 70s and it had been running since. So they know stuff. They are the go-to persons for this knowledge. But it also comes that if you work really hard, if you go to the testers, you'll know how the application works. So you also, as a tester, get a lot of expert knowledge. The other thing that also happens, kind of what we talked about in the business segment, is that sometimes there's no testers. It's the developers that's testing. And they've been doing that for, again, a range of years. They've never had testers in that application. And I see this happen sort of in enterprise applications or in companies where they've for instance, in the 90s, built their first version of the IT system, and it's still running. And I mean, BDD and CDD and Agile wasn't even invented when those applications were built. So they have no sort of tradition for having testers, but they are obviously still testing the applications. It's just some call it the application consultants or system developers or whatever you call it that's doing that. And last of them is that I often work in infrastructure projects, on transition projects, or projects that has to do with servers or network. And who are my testers there? That's not me. I'm not going to test any Cisco setup or whatever network setup. I'll have to rely that they are actually my testers. They have the domain knowledge I need to figure out how to put in play. So sometimes these people are part of your team, and it works nicely because they're more or less dedicated, as one is usually when you are in a team or in a project. But sometimes it also happens that these people are outside of your team. You need to reach out to have their help and to get that info into the team. And I often see this, that actually they say, yeah, you might have a project that needs help, but I'm doing solving some big problem on production, or I'm too busy. They are busy and they have their day job. They have to, business people have to sell stuff or register orders, or support people have to take support calls. There's all kinds of excuses or elaborations of, sorry, I can't help you test. And they have no need to become testers, but I need them to do some testing. Sometimes you could say, yeah, I'll just have some manager command them to do testing for me. But it turns out then they'll find out some other excuse not to be able to help me. So command and control doesn't necessarily work. So we have to play with some kind of motivation. So I was looking into that. How can we motivate people? This is where the next section comes in. Volunteers and prima donnas. So I live in a small country called Denmark, and we have a youth organization called the FDF, and you have nothing similar over here. Well, that I know of. So it's a Christian youth organization. It's not Christian in the American sense. It's actually a Scandinavian sense. We do these playful activities. We dip rags in ethanol and set it on fire and sort of do catch between us. That's one of the playful things that we like to play, fireballs. Imagine that. So what we have is some adults like me that wants to play with these kids and have fun with them. And in that setting, I've been a leader because we call the adults leaders for some reason. And then there's a person in charge of it all. That's a leader. And that was me for a while. So the adults that come every Wednesday or whenever it is, they're not paid to come. I mean, I can't fire them. I can't hire them as we are used to in the business world. There's no direct management. There's no hierarchies. They come when they can, or if they want to, or if they're motivated towards doing it. I can't. If I wanted to, I wouldn't even like to professionalize them and say, if you come tomorrow, I'll give you so and so many dollars. That doesn't motivate them. What I figured out is that you have to come here for the fellowship of being together and working with the kids. So I see some parallels in leading the volunteers and leading those that we saw just before, that they they don't want to come, but perhaps I can make them come. I can make them come, these experts, by appreciate the positive behavior, by saying thank you, and again, focusing on that we are in this together. And a friend of mine actually wrote a PhD about that, called We're in This Together. He said, isn't it odd that I can get a teacher who has been in school all day to come voluntarily in the evening at night and be with kids? That's odd. I mean, what tricks these people? Why does this happen? That they volunteer to do something they could actually get paid for. So it's actually a matter of that if you put in the time and you show up, you actually get to decide what is happening. And it reminded me of a meeting concept, you could call it, that if you call in a meeting and people show up, then the people in the meeting gets to decide. Those that are not there, they didn't prioritize it for some reason, then we'll just move with the people that are available. So the prima donna, that's her, the opera singer, sort of the arrogant, vain, narcissistic performer of, I don't know. This is where motivation, it's super intrinsically motivated, what happens in those contexts. There's actually a study about this a couple of years back in Denmark. They studied healthcare professionals because apparently the doctors are very much prima donna-like and wants to control everything, but also the actors, as I just mentioned, the Royal Theatre actors. This is the book. Unfortunately, the book is in Danish. But what they found out, what these prima donnas, what they get a kick out of when it's only motivation that moves them, is that it's making a difference. It's sort of getting the highest sense of calling is being on stage and performing. But if they're not motivated, it just gets into being a day job for them. Just go on stage and perform the act and go home. And then they become workers, so that's something to be aware of. So, as I said, I'm from Denmark. It's a situation where we have so much healthcare that money doesn't really drive people, because the last money you own, that's being taxed the hardest. So yeah, I'll give you, I don't know, many more money to come to work in the weekend. Why? It's all eaten up anyways. So that's one key factor. Another key factor is that there's a lot of trust within the Danish society. We trust each other. And people want to work on or choose to work on things that they can be proud of and put a pride in their work. So there's actually some studies around this as well. HBR.org has this article that puts all the countries' culture on a scale from consensual, where people get together and decide, to a top-down approach where the manager decides everything. There's also the angle whether it's very hierarchical organization or very egalitarian organization over here on the left-hand side. And Denmark is down here along with Norway and Sweden and the Netherlands. The United States is up there with a more top-down approach. So a joke could say that in Denmark and Sweden and Norway, you get people together, feed them cake, and then they'll decide, and they'll be the best for the organization. in the States and other top-down things, the highest person in the room usually gets to say things. So that's something to be aware of. Where is your organization country-wise, but also where's the organization? Is it and I just grabbed this from the Accelerate book on DevOps that just came out recently. There might be different types of organizations, and this is just one model of organizations, but I thought it very interesting. There's the bureaucratic in the middle. Here we go. There's the pathological, power-oriented organization over here, and then the more performance-oriented, generative organization over here. We need to be aware of this. Are the messengers shut, neglected, or trained? That could be one indicator on where you are. You go to your management and say, found a bug. Yeah, done, you're fired, out, whatever. That would probably over here, right? So, but I found a bug. But management doesn't listen to you if they even bother. That's probably in the middle. And then, I found a bug. Great. I'll give you some more training or options or whatever. Let's figure out what we need. What can we learn from this sort of small, I guess, learning organization over here. So the last segment is, so now we looked into some of the theories. What do I do to lead all these subject matter experts? So the general approach goes like this. It's 4 parts. It's about expectations. It's about facilitating and support. It's about administration and tooling, because that's needed also sometimes. And it's about making the people that test self-reliant. And I'm, this is one of my favorite, I'm as context-driven as the context allows. I would like for my solution to fit the project that I'm in, as we just saw the culture and the organization that I'm in. So we need to read the room, as Joanna was talking about actually just 2 sessions ago. And I'm focused on finding solutions, and I actually prefer talking about achievements over finding problems. But I'm still in testing. The role that I usually have is sometimes a test coach, where I'll try to implement some activities for the team to carry on. Usually I'm a test manager. This is my title. Test manager in the sense that I don't manage any testers. I usually facilitate people that are doing testing. Sometimes it might be professional tester like we have here at the conference. Sometimes it's someone else. It's one of the 5 types that I talked about previously. It might be business people, it might be test engineers. I'm working on a project right now. It's half test engineers and half business people. Sometimes it's something else. So I manage the testing that is happening, not the testers. So when I'm managing or helping these people that are testing for me, they don't have to know rapid software testing or modern testing or context-driven testing. They don't need to know. They don't want to be testers, as I talked about before. They don't want it as a discipline. But it's my role to say, okay, in this context, we should go this way. I'll help you. But I also want them to focus on thinking about it. And so I put that in a slide. Think first and analyze and consider the things. But sometimes I also have to start with them just basically checking some things, because that's where I can get them started. Okay, now we moved this server from data center A to data center B. Right, how can we check, how can we confirm that it has correctly been moved? and then sort of build from there. Okay, now we checked it. How can we then move on and then move to a more thinking about what can actually go wrong and help them? So I find my experience is you have to write expectations down. So I do write test plan documents or test strategy documents to say, this is how we approach this in this project. These are the people doing the testing, these are the tools, whatever we need to write down. And usually a nice formatted document is the best way to do it. I would prefer that this could be a mind map, okay, personally, or anything else. But I just figured out a Word document, that's what makes the world go round. So that's what I do. Yeah, so as we talked about before, I have to respect their time and their know-how, because that's what I need from them. I need to trust them, but I also need to follow up on them. So that can be done in a couple of ways. I would prefer that I can just call them, or because sometimes I work globally, so they are all over the place, and say, how's it going today? Any issues? And they, oh, Jesper, you're making us a status call. No, I just want to hear how's it going? But, okay, please put it in my calendar so we can meet every other day. I'll put it in the calendar. Then there comes some status meeting. I don't like it, but that's the way. If that's needed, then that's what we'll do. I also focus on making it easy for them. So if I can prepare like a template in our test case management tool for them to run through, then I'll do that. Or if I need to book them time in their calendar, okay, Tina, do you have problems finding time to test? You want me to, book in a time slot from 12 to 3 on Tuesday to test? I'll do it, no worries. I also have to teach them to test or teach them to use the tool. And I'll do that very gradually. I'll say, okay, here's the test you have to run. Okay, click here. That's it so far. Let me know when you find the first bug. Then we can look into how can you actually submit the bug into our system. Oh no, you found the bug and it has been fixed. Let me then tell you how you can mark it as passed or whatever we need to do. So it's gradually helping them and making it simple for them to learn about the tool and the testing practices. And one trick I find really helpful to figure out is actually to have it whether it's open or closed questions. I was reading through 500 requirements, and some were good, but some were awfully open. It must be easy to search in the application. Or when you click this, if you have this right, then this should be possible. That's sort of a closed requirement, closed text. So actually I will be using text analysis to figure out what to automate and what to have people doing. Because the closed questions are usually some tedious tasks that we can just automate just based out of the requirement written. But all the open questions are things that sort of require a bit more thinking skills. That would go in the pile for the experts. And then we can have that automated. And I have seen some tools that actually enables the business people to do automation, but I'm still cautious for them to do it. Perhaps that still requires some coding knowledge. So this is what we're doing in the current project is actually we'll have some test engineers writing automation on the closed questions, and then the subject matter experts on the more open ones. Right. And then for For the open ones, perhaps we should then talk with them around having that arranged as outlines or scenarios, or help them break down, okay, so you want to say, okay, what steps do you need to have your test broken down to in order to test it? What are you actually going to do? And we can help them with that. We can also perhaps look into tooling on making test evidence capture smarter. Where I'm working, it's important to have a screenshot of the requirement for some audit purposes, and then perhaps we can have a tool that does that. Self-reliance. Okay, so actually, as I said before, let's take the tooling one step at a time, but also let's work towards that they can do that on their own. I'll train them the couple of first times, and I'll say, yeah, you got this. Please keep on doing it. And I'll make myself replaceable. I'll draw myself from that. I actually had some Windows Server technicians that didn't want to access the test case management tool at all, to then actually updating it on their own. It was nice because then I actually hadn't to do the work, but that told me that I had been successful in helping them take over the testing and own it as an activity that they will be doing. And in this topic, we'll actually touching upon some of Jerry Weinberg's work in how do we get people to change, because there are actually steps people go through when we have people that we want to change. And this is a model that he introduced many years ago. There's a status quo. We know how the world works, but then something comes by that changes this status quo. And first of all, we reject it. That won't happen. Or I can't do that. Denial anger one is very similar to his work. Then, okay, if we can't reject it, we'll try to accommodate it and do it sort of not willingly, but if I have to, then I might just do it. And then at a certain point, they actually transform how to do it and integrate it into their daily work. And then we suddenly have the new status quo here. So there's actually a lot of help in looking into models about organizational change management and what happens to people when people change in order to motivate the experts also. So I'm also good on time, sorry about that. I'll just recap here. So we looked into the subject matter experts or different tester prototypes, kinds of testers. We looked into some of the research about what does it mean when it's the calling the matter that most. What matters when it's actually volunteers that we're working with, someone that comes on their own free will, or similarly come as their own free will, some things that we need their help from. We looked into the hierarchical egalitarian model, and we looked a bit into Vestrum from the Accelerate book. And then the practical tips on the expectations, on respecting them and helping them and building their self-reliance. So that's me.